Speaking of Diggle and Felicity, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about what's been going on in the Green Arrow comic book lately. So, about 4 years ago, DC realized that all their titles were they were built on a giant pile of crap of continuity on top of more shit on top of more shit, and they decided that it was best to just start over, to just wipe out all this continuity and start over clean, and essentially do a reboot of all their titles and just start over fresh. So what they did, like storyline wise, they did this thing with the Flash. He went back in the past, and these in continuity reboots. So what happened before it did happen, it's just that it's inconsequential to what's gonna happen going forward. So this new timeline gets created, and they go to 52 different um, ongoing series. So thus the new 52. And so we got Green Arrow, starts over from scratch, dropping his famous goatee look and going for a look that looks more like Connor Hawk, more like Justin Hartley kind of look to Green Arrow, which he hasn't had since the 1940s, the pre-Denny O'Neil Green Arrow. And so this first big arc he has, he's fighting this villain named Midas, who's this like Toxic Avenger knockoff. He's like this big toxic waste monster, and he has a android lover named Blood Rose who teams up with him, and it's just, I mean, to me, it just seems very typical. It just seems like typical DC Comics schlock. And the book goes through two or three different creative teams during this period. Nothing really sticking, nothing really doing all that much for anybody. Finally, in Green Arrow 17, a writer by the name of Jeff Lemire takes over with art by Sorrentino. So we got the Lemire Sorrentino team, and they introduce this uh, antagonist named Komodo. Now keep him in mind because we're going to be talking about him when we talk about the episodes. So we got this big arc with Komodo, who was once a protege of Oliver's father, both in business and in archery. And Oliver meets up with the new 52 version of Shadow, and they go back to the island, and he learns more about his origin, the circumstances surrounding that, and the big part of the Lemire Sorrentino run is that's what they call these runs. So when you get like an artist, writer team, creative team together, colorist, etc., they do any number of issues, anywhere from like 6 issues to however many issues on a particular title. It's called a run. So big part of their run is this thing called the Outsiders War, and it's basically these clans, these weapon clans. So Komodo is the head of the Arrow clan. They're all based around these ancient totem weapons, like the spear. You have the Spear Clan, Mask Clan, Shield Clan, Sword Clan, things like that. And each of these clans possess a ancient totem weapon that has mystical properties. So the Arrow clan's mystical weapon is you guessed it, the Green Arrow. So while Oliver's over in the island doing that, Arrow's support team back in Seattle, because the comics take place in Seattle, not Starling City, and his support team consist of Naomi and Fife, not Diggle and Felicity. But actually, this is where Diggle makes his debut in the comics. He ends up joining Arrow support team, and there's this Richard Dragon, like I talked about before. The new 52 Richard Dragon is gathering a bunch of bad guys like Killer Moth, Brick, Count Vertigo, the new 52 Count Vertigo that's introduced here. And keep him in mind because we're going to talk about him when we get to the episodes. So, anyway, so this Outsiders War thing happens. Oliver comes back from the island, joins up with Diggle and his support team again, and defeats Richard Dragon and all that. So, that was that run on Green Arrow was considered a success, and not just the story stuff, but also the art by Sorrentino, which is really pretty cool stuff. It's not your typical DC Comics stuff. They do a lot of cool things with like panels and things, and with like Vertigo, for example, like the actual like Vertigo effect. They actually do some really cool stuff with panels and stuff to really kind of illustrate it. Some really out of the box stuff that's really cool. The actual covers of the issues that cover the Outsiders War look really cool. They really stand out. They're not just your typical DC Comics freaking covers that you see. I mean, if you saw these with a bunch of other comic books, they definitely stand out. So then we get a new creative team after it's Green Arrow number 35. We get a new creative team, and one of the main writer on it is Andrew Kreisberg, who you may sound familiar to you because he is a executive producer on Arrow. And what ends up happening with the Arrow comic can be best summed up as you may expect. Now, this run on Green Arrow is a bit decisive, I would say, because there's those who think the comic kind of lost its way. Then there are those who praised it because they believe that it kind of returned Green Arrow to how he's supposed to be, like pre-New 52, where he's more of like a Robin Hood type character. And which, ironically, the people that seemed to like the Kreisberg Sampere, or I believe I'm pronouncing that right, run on the comic, seem to be fans of the Arrow TV show. And if it's one thing that the producers of the Arrow TV show know, is how to write Oliver Queen properly. So anyway, very first issue of this run, they drop Green Arrow's support team from the comics. Fife, Naomi, Amiko, they're just dropped. Except for Diggle. Diggle's still there. Oh, okay. Felicity shows up at the end of the issue, the new 52 debut of Felicity. And we get the big villain is the Dark Archer, and he's looking for Mia Dearden. And for those who don't know, her analogous character in the Arrow TV show is Oliver's sister, Thea. So you can see that they're definitely going out of their way to make this like the Arrow TV show. Like Kreisberg is saying, fuck you to all the Jeff Lemire stuff. I'm just going to do the Arrow TV show as a comic. And there's a lot of talk about saving the city. I mean, this is not Green Arrow, comic book Green Arrow. This is clearly Green Arrow. Oh, and another thing too, they stopped drawing Green Arrow like Justin Hartley, the actor who portrayed him on Smallville, and they started drawing him like Stephen Amell. And you think that Kreisberg would try to incorporate some of the Lemire stuff, like more of the Lemire stuff, and try to get it to work instead of just dropping it. But this is another example of the writers of Arrow and the producers of being lazy, of lazy writing, and we'll get into that later. More examples of the lazy writing. Oh yeah, and also Lex Luthor and Batman are there. Oh, of course. Hey, let me just check my pockets for a second. Okay, let's take a look here. All right. Hey, why don't you look at that? I have no fucks to give. Yes. So Batman's fucking there. So anyway, so fast forward to the last issue of their run, and there's this big team up, and on the cover, there's Batman and Lex Luthor on the cover. You get into the actual issue, Luthor's probably only there for like a panel, and Batman is just there, and he interrogates a guy doing his tired old shtick of, I'm Batman, swear to me, I'm Batman, And even at this point, even with this continuity only being 4 years old, even the villains must be fucking tired of this shit. And here's another thing too. Excuse me if I'm wrong about this, but wasn't like a month prior to this, didn't like Batman and Joker have a big fight in a cave where they stabbed the shit out of each other and they both died? Why is Batman even alive in this? And I suppose it's supposed to have taken place before that, but it's just I don't know how people coherently are able to read all the titles in the DC library here and keeping track on what's taking place when and who's alive and dead and all this other crap. When Batman's in probably 10 titles, 10 DC titles. And here's another thing. Okay, so do they have a gauge of how big the threats are? Because Luthor and Batman show up to help out, but where's the Justice League? But I suppose this is just a comic book thing. I should just accept it. So after that runs over, we get a new writer and artist on it this month. Joker's on the cover, but as you guess, no Joker in the issue, so again with the false advertisement. And it's kind of returning more to the Lemire stuff. His old support team's back. Fife and Amico. And it's probably not as good, but at least it's in that vein. It wasn't just thrown out to accommodate the freaking TV show. And I think the stuff that Lemire Sorrentino did, that would translate best to Arrow. Because, I'm kind of, as a quote from Lemire, it says that his take on Green Arrow has similar elements, but executed in a different way. Like, he was mindful of the Arrow TV show. And I really think it would translate the best out of a lot of the Green Arrow stuff, like actual comics. It would translate best to live action, to Arrow. And you can't do, resurrected Oliver Queen. I mean, I guess you can now. You can't really do the Carter Hawk stuff because he's not old enough in this universe. You can't do the hard traveling hero stuff because Green Lantern doesn't exist. You can't do the pre-Denny O'Neil Green Arrow because it's just fucking retarded and it's a big Batman ripoff. So